Hello, MennoNerds!
So I'm here with a whole bunch of my friends. We hang out on Tuesday nights doing some weird gaming things and everything like that. And I asked them to help me to answer Will's question as to the 12 different things that we think we want to pass on to the next generation. I asked these friends of mine to be able to help me out with this video tonight because I don't like to have the arrogance in thinking that somehow I have everything figured out. So I really do rely on a lot of other people to be able to give me insights and everything. So these friends of mine, I've got two of them to help me out. And of course, my wife Heather's helping me out with one of them. And the other guys just like to hang out too. And we had some good discussions and some good conversations about this. But the persons and the stories and the passages that we came up with are really important, really central to what we think our faith is about.
So my person that I chose is Isaiah, who was an Old Testament prophet, spoke on behalf of God to Israel. Specifically, I was thinking of the passage in which he gets a vision of God on his throne, and he falls down crying out, "Woe, for I am a man of unclean lips." And I chose him to express the holiness of God, where God entrusts a man to speak on his behalf, and yet he couldn't even stand in the presence of God just by seeing him.
I chose is Ruth because of her love and loyalty, and then eventually her faith in an unknown and foreign God.
The person that I chose is Peter, because Peter was probably the most real of the disciples to me, very deeply flawed and far from perfect, and yet he's the one that Jesus said he was going to build his church upon.
For my person, I want to choose the gentleman from Mark 9 who quoted, "Lord, I believe, forgive my unbelief." It's a very poignant and very human way of answering Christ, to be able to say that you want to believe, you have the faith, but you really sometimes struggle with it.
I chose is the story of Hosea and Gomer. Hosea was also an Old Testament prophet, and he was instructed by God to take a adulterous wife. Gomer was a prostitute, so he married her, and then Gomer predictably adulterated herself again, returning to prostitution, and God instructed Hosea to buy her back. The purpose of the story was to convey the faithfulness of God even in the face of the unfaithfulness of the Israelites.
My story is about Gideon and the fleece, showing that you can test God and it's okay to know if God's actually asking you to do something. And in modern times, we use prayer, the Bible, and other Christians to decipher that.
The story I chose is Abraham, because you start off with him with all of his doubts and his progression from doubt and constant questioning to being one of the most perfect examples of godly faith.
Really enjoy generally the stories of Paul, but I particularly like when Paul's interacting with the non-believers and the philosophers around him, where he is responding to them where they are, sometimes with exasperation, sometimes with much mercy and much love, the true missionary and true evangelist.
And the passage that I selected is from Romans 3, and it starts at verse 9, and I'll just read until I feel like stopping. "What shall we conclude then? Are we any better? Not at all. We have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles alike are all under sin. As it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one."
And then my passage is 1 John 3:16 through 18. "By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. We also ought to lay down our lives for our brethren. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in deed, but in truth and in action."
Is Philippians 4:4 through 9. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And going on in verses 8 and 9, it talks about fixing your mind on the things of God and how that also brings about the peace of God.
And of course, my favorite passage, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't have my Bible right in front of me, Romans 12, 1-3. Basically, make your life a living sacrifice to God, because it is through that spiritual act of worship, that your life will be transformed, that you'll no longer be following the patterns of this world, but you'll still be following the pattern that Christ laid out for us. And that is how we then will be able to figure out what his true, perfect, and wonderful will is.